Welcome to Let's Examine Halo 5. Today we're going to be taking a look at the second to final level of the campaign, The Breaking. Now, if any level summarizes Halo 5's level design problems, it's this level, definitely, but we'll get into that as we play through this level. And definitely, this level's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it's sadly, it's just not that interesting. So right off the bat, we're introduced to an unskippable first-person cutscene, a Call of Duty style, where it yanks the controller away from the player. And sadly, I would be fine with these first-person cutscenes if they were only skippable, because taking control away from the player in the level, that's... I play a game because I want to be in control, not because I want to watch something else be in control, but, so right off the bat, let's get going. We're getting the band back together, as the little subtitle says. Now, this level, I feel like I'm not going to have a lot to talk about, because this is definitely not a bad level, but it's also one of the duller levels. Something I can compliment this level on is it does provide a lot of firefight scenarios. It's funny because it's very much like a horde-based level where you're just killing things as they spawn. And in terms of just a fun, memorable level, no, this level is definitely not that memorable in its design. It's very, very formulaic and pretty much highlights all of Halo 5's level design problems, but if I'm like, let's say it's late at night, and I'm like, I just want to kill things, this level would be that level. I'd load it up, I'd turn off all the dialogue, and I'd just shoot things because they just don't stop spawning. So, as you guys can see, this level does not have a very good skybox, very low res quality overall, very unimpressive, just nothing pretty really to look at, which is very sad aside from some of the structures. Now, also, as you're starting to notice, we're getting a lot of Prometheans, and yeah, that's the enemies we're going to be fighting in this level, 100%. They're all Prometheans, which I feel like kind of similar to the final level of Halo 4, where all you fought were Prometheans. This is kind of another level where 343 is trying to get us to kind of warm up to the Prometheans a little bit, and the sad thing is, well, they're much better to fight in Halo 5. They're a lot more fun to fight. They're still not there, this isn't enough to make them fun to fight, all of the changes introduced, and it also sadly doesn't help that this level is not very interesting visually. There's not a lot of variety in terms of the locations that we fight. There's not a lot going on. It's really just an open room that we fight them in. Why not? Okay, so the whole idea is that we are trying to fight our way to Cortana. So, okay, how about have a sequence where we have to kind of do some mild platforming and stuff, and we have to kind of ride little airships to and from islands that are kind of floating around in the sky, and we have to press buttons and stuff to lower bridges. Or maybe even, this would be a perfect place to have some aerial combat if we're fighting up to a platform in the sky. Let's get into some Phaetons, or even like a Pelican or something, and let's, do some aerial combat with the Prometheans, but sadly, no. It's the traditional Halo 5 level design formula of you enter a room, you kill all the enemies, the door opens, you walk down a corridor or ride a thing as characters spit expository dialogue, then you enter a bigger room, you kill all the enemies, and rinse and repeat. So, as you can see here, look, a platform for us to ride literally spawns in, so obviously, they put a Forerunner little teleporty thing in front of it, but I don't know, are you guys kind of starting to see what it is that I mean about Halo 5's level design being very formulaic? I mean, right here's the perfect example of it. Look, we cleared the room, the door opened, now we get to listen to the expository dialogue as we're getting to the next room that we have to clear. It's sadly very predictable, very formulaic, nothing for the player to really be wowed by. One of the reasons I say Halo 5's campaign didn't wow me and blow me away is because so far, there isn't a single thing that Halo 5 does that I have never seen before in a Halo game. I mean, the Guardian, running down the Guardian, if you really think about it, remove the skybox being kind of in front of you, and it's just another linear hallway that you're running down, albeit with some slightly changed gravity. And arguably, you could say you've seen that in Halo 2 with the outside sequences, changed gravity. And definitely this, actually, I get bad flashbacks to Shutdown from Halo 5, or Halo 4. It's that level, you know, where you ride the Pelican and you have to ride the gondolas, and that level overall was sadly very predictable because I had a similar problem. The level like the writing was on the wall, you know, the game didn't even try to hide how predictable the level design was going to be. The second you get on the gondola in Halo 4 and you begin riding it, you can literally see the platforms where the gondola is going to stop and enemies are going to spawn. And sadly, that's the same here. You know, this level follows the rule of 3, where we have to do this 3 times. We have to clear 3 platforms before we can finally beat the level. And definitely, I would say this is one of the shorter levels as well. It's very easy to beat, very quick. But, you know, I'm trying to go through it a little bit more carefully, a little bit more slowly, so that there's more to talk about, which I'm starting to realize is a little bit of a... I don't know, you know, if it sounds like I'm very disinterested, it's sadly because this level is disinteresting. It's not bad, like I said, but I mean, what are we gonna talk about here, you know? It's just a formulaic Halo 5 level. Now, something I can compliment 343 on is the amount of weapons that they've scattered around the level. I wish that there were a few more UNSC weapons, because I do feel that's also a problem with the 343 Halo games so far. They can't really come up with good reasons to scatter UNSC weapons around. I mean, we saw on Genesis where their excuse was the Guardians bring in ships from other worlds, which, okay, you know, that's not the worst excuse, but it comes across as very video gamey. Like, if you were to remove that and literally just put UNSC weapons on Genesis, it wouldn't even make a difference, honestly. It would make just the same amount of sense. There's also these little turrets, which I don't think I've ever actually talked about these turrets. I don't think these turrets are the worst. I know a lot of people really hate them, but sadly these turrets aren't very compelling. Like, I think of the Sentinels. They're very comparable, actually, to the Sentinels, because the Sentinels, they just kind of sit there and shoot beams at you. But the thing about the Sentinels was there was a weakness to them. With these turrets, really the only weakness is do a lot of damage to them. So there's the Warden. He comes in, and he actually gets sucked up by Cortana, which I did actually find very funny. I actually did laugh at that, because I was sitting here, during my first playthrough of the game, I was like, oh no, another Warden fight? And then it was like, nope! And she just yoinks him out, and I was like, oh, okay, you know what, okay, alright, that was fine, that was a good moment there, you know, you had me fooled, 343, but back to those little turret things. I think one of the primary problems with those turrets is just how they're really just a turret that you shoot until it blows up. The Sentinels, on the other hand, they've got weaknesses to plasma weaponry, and they come in swarms as well, so if you see a swarm coming, pick up a plasma rifle or a plasma pistol and you can down the swarm very easily. If you don't have any, you've got to use your assault rifle or other weapons, and that's not really going to get you far with those things. And sadly, you know, with those Forerunner turrets, there's no weakness like that. They just kind of sit there, they just absorb damage until they explode. They're not very interesting. You know, I really don't think a 343 employee that designed those turrets as enemies sat there and thought, this is genius, this is perfect, I love it, like this is the best enemy I've ever come up with. Really, I feel like a lot of 343 employees, when they're designing enemies for us to fight in the game, they gotta think like that, you know, they gotta think, is this truly fun as hell? Would I have a blast killing these things? Because sadly, a lot of Promethean enemies, I really don't have a blast killing outside of maybe the Knight. Definitely, it's really sad actually to see the Watcher get such a gimp, because as funny as it is, people really hate on the Watcher a lot for the fact that he revives enemies, and I don't think that was really the problem. I don't think the reviving enemies was the problem with the Watcher. I don't know, I had more fun fighting the Watcher in Halo 4 than I did 5. In 5, actually, I would rather just remove them because they don't really seem to do anything in combat. I mean, they'll shoot at you occasionally. Something maybe that you could do is give them very, very low health and have them come in swarms, just firing down hard light at you, kind of. I think make them replacements for the buggers from Halos 1 through Reach. I don't know, what do you guys think about, or Halos 2 through Reach, I should say. What do you guys think? Could that work, do you think? But here we are, actually, we're coming up to the end of the level. We've reached the final platform, the final, you know, little arena, the little challenge room that we have to fight, and then finally we're going to get on to the next level, which is thankfully much more interesting and memorable. And actually, the next level, there is a little subtlety in its design that I actually appreciate, that I'd love to get into when we get to it, but we're not there yet. We're talking still about this level. I'm just trying to ride out the time. I can see it. I've got less than 5 minutes here. I can make it! I sadly would just be a broken record if I kept talking about a lot of this level's flaws, just the uninteresting and unchanging art style. You know, there's no variety in the locations that we're fighting. We just keep fighting Prometheans over and over again. Something, though, that I can compliment, if I want to compliment something, is the choice of music, and honestly, the dialogue during this sequence is not half bad. Now, sadly, it's in service of a very uninteresting story, in my opinion, but this is definitely a level where I feel the writing really started to pick up, and I actually started to get a little bit invested, because for the first time in this campaign, something is happening, something is actually changing, and I'm fighting to do something. And so I actually started to feel like, alright, I'm starting to get into this, and then it also really helps that we're being complimented by the classic Warthog theme. That's what I call it. I know it's just people call it the Halo theme, but I know it from its Halo 3 name, which a lot of people just call it the Warthog theme. There we go, we got a pretty cool, very rare soldier assassination. And just overall, this is, at the end of the level, it ends a little bit stronger than it starts, but that being said, the reason it ends so strong is because it's being complemented by the incredible music here. And I actually really like Kazuma Jinochi's rearrangement of the Warthog theme. He adds a lot to it that I don't think Marty's ever really considered. It's well, I died there, but it's really interesting because Kazuma Jinochi added a whole new layer to the song to make it feel more bombastic and stuff, as well as different, and I appreciate it. You know, it sounds familiar but slightly different, and that's what I feel the Halo soundtrack should be, and maybe even some of the level design. It's a really big pity that 343 took the Halo level design and tried to flip it on its head, because Halo's level design works. You know, Halo 3, we're coming up on 10 years, and Halo 3 still holds up in terms of having really great level design. And it's like, you know, you don't change what doesn't, or you don't change what isn't bad. I think I just butchered that saying. Yeah, I don't know, I'm just, you know, we're sitting here at the end of the level, and I've got to talk for another 3 minutes, and I don't really know what to talk about. I feel like I've said everything. My apologies, guys, really, if this is just kind of like a boring Let's Examine. I know it's a boring one, I'm aware, but sadly that's all I can really say about this level, just really nothing. You know, the Prometheans, I think they work well when you're fighting them alongside the Covenant, because the two factions do complement off of each other in the heat of the combat, but as their own levels, they suffer from the same problem the Meridian sequences had, where it's like the Prometheans still just are not fun to fight on their own. And sadly, well, Meridian didn't have a lot of variety in terms of scenery and gameplay arenas. This level has it even worse. Like, this is pretty much just the opening sequence of the level. You know, just Forerunner structures as far as the eye can see. And so here we go, we're coming to an end and this is a very controversial sequence in the campaign. This is definitely, I think a lot of people agree, the worst structured sequence here. Luckily, we don't need to fight all 17 Wardens or whatever that was, but we are now fighting 3 Wardens at once, and while I appreciate what 343 was trying to do, they didn't get it. Look, see, putting more hard enemies, that's not challenge. Actually, what's cool is if you go here, you can actually use your Spartan abilities and get over there and just skip the Warden fight entirely, but we're not going to do that for the purposes of this little Let's Examine. When you design a boss sequence, how you make it challenging is you make the boss challenging, and you design the arena that we fight him in to complement the boss and the way that the boss works and stuff. this arena, I don't really think a lot of time and planning went into the way that we fight the Warden here. You know, I don't really think that weeks and weeks of planning went into this little boss fight here. It really does feel like they were like, well, we have this empty room, and it's kind of like almost the last level. How about we just stick 3 Wardens here? That's hard, right? And yeah, it is hard. It's pretty difficult, especially on Legendary, but it's difficult for the wrong reasons. It's difficult because they stuck us in a not very well designed arena with 3 not very well designed bosses. And so we've taken down 1 Warden and stuff. You know, I mean, you can almost see just how little effort went into this little arena here, because they've just kind of haphazardly stuck little, like, here's a rocket launcher, here's a scatter shot, like, they just shoved things everywhere. And in terms of, like, how immersive this is, does this really make sense that the Warden would have all of these weapons just here for no reason? You know, why not in an armory somewhere? But I don't know. So we're at the end of arguably the most meh, like definitely the blandest level. It's not bad, but bland would be a good way to describe it. And, you know, right there, we killed the boss, the door opened, and so we are finally at the end of the level here. So guys, what did you think of the breaking? Personally, I definitely, like, nothing. I got nothing. But the next level actually is pretty fun, and so I'm actually excited to dive into that, and I'll see you guys on the next one.